Before we dive in, don't forget to support the channel. With nearly 90% of viewers still not subscribed, your help means everything. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell icon, and drop your city in the comments. We love seeing where you're tuning in from. In the peaceful town of Willowbrook, life moved at a gentle, unhurried rhythm. The streets were framed by whispering trees and cozy little homes, each carrying its own silent history. Among them stood the modest house of Claire and Daniel Rivers, a couple married for 7 years, a stretch of time that somehow felt both swift and endless. Their life had settled into a rhythm, steady, familiar, and to Claire, quietly suffocating. Claire had always been drawn to adventure. Her heart ached for distant cities, unfamiliar languages, and nights under foreign skies. But reality had demanded something else: a house to care for, a steady job, and a loving, if somewhat distracted, husband. Daniel worked in IT for a large firm, loyal and dependable to a fault. He often came home with his laptop still humming, his mind wrapped in lines of code. Claire appreciated his devotion, but with each passing year, a quiet emptiness began to bloom between them, a silence that no routine could fill. Each morning, Claire would rise early, make breakfast, pack Daniel's lunch, and kiss him goodbye as he disappeared into the bustle of the day. Then came the stillness. The walls of their home, once lively, now echoed with absence. She spent her days working at a small local bakery. The work was warm and familiar, comforting even, but it didn't stir her soul like it once had. Until one rainy afternoon changed everything. She was locking up when she heard the jingle of the delivery bell. Enter Eli, the new delivery guy from the nearby grocery store. He was young, with a charming, boyish smile that seemed to cut through the grayness of the rain-soaked day. "Hey, Claire, got your order," he said, soaked from head to toe but still grinning as he handed over a box of supplies. "You're a lifesaver," she laughed, feeling a flutter in her chest she hadn't felt in years. As they unpacked the order together, conversation flowed easily. Eli listened, really listened, and made her laugh in a way that reminded her of who she used to be. That dormant version of herself started to stir. "Don't you ever get bored, just running deliveries?" Claire asked, half teasing. "Sometimes," Eli replied with a shrug. "But I like meeting people. Keeps things interesting." He spoke of dreams, of becoming a photographer, of traveling to capture the world through his lens. And Claire, listening, felt both admiration and a quiet ache. Here was someone still chasing wonder, untouched by the weight of expectations. Rain tapped against the windows. The two stood closer than they should, words trailing off into silence thick with something unspoken. "I should get back to work," Claire said, glancing at the clock, though her feet didn't move. "Want to grab coffee sometime?" Eli asked suddenly, his cheeks turning a warm shade of red. Claire froze. The question hung between them like a spark in the air. "Sure." "Why not?" she said, surprising herself with the answer. Days passed, and that one yes grew louder in her thoughts. A blend of thrill and guilt shadowed her every step. Daniel was a good man. She loved him, but some small part of her longed for something more. When the day of their meeting came, Claire took her time getting ready. She wore a flowing dress that made her feel like herself again, not just someone's wife or employee. She spotted Eli in the corner of the cafe, waving with the same disarming smile. Their conversation flowed like a stream, natural and unforced. They shared stories, laughed easily, and for the first time in ages, Claire felt seen. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the window pane, Claire leaned in closer, pulled by something she couldn't quite explain. "Can I be honest with you?" Eli asked, his voice softer now. "Of course," Claire replied, her heart skipping. "I know this might sound crazy, but there's something special here. I know we just met, but I haven't felt like this with anyone in a long time." Claire's breath caught. The excitement, the fear, the guilt, they all rushed in at once. "I'm married," she said, the words heavy as stone. "I know," Eli said quietly, holding her gaze. "But does that mean you can't feel alive for just one moment?" Claire didn't answer. She couldn't, because deep down she wasn't sure. Though Julia loved Mark, she couldn't ignore the longing that had quietly taken root in her heart, the ache for passion, spontaneity, and the version of herself she'd left behind. The thought of breaking free, even just for a fleeting moment, felt like a breath of fresh air after years underwater. After that first meeting, she and Ben exchanged numbers. She walked home that evening with a smile tugging at her lips, already anticipating the next time they'd meet. Deep down, she knew she was walking a dangerous path, but for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. In the weeks that followed, their coffee dates became more frequent. Laughter turned to flirtation. Casual touches lingered a little too long, and their moments together grew increasingly intimate. Every encounter felt like shedding the skin of the life she'd outgrown. Safe, yes, but predictable and stifling. But as the excitement grew, so did the weight on her conscience. Julia would return home to Mark, who greeted her with his familiar smile and warm embrace. And with each ordinary night they spent together, the contrast between the comfort of her marriage and the electricity of her secret life with Ben became more jarring. One evening, as Mark wrapped his arms around her in the kitchen, she felt her stomach twist with guilt. She loved him. She truly did. Yet she was betraying the very foundation of the life they'd built. What had once felt like a harmless escape now felt like a slow unraveling of everything she thought she stood for. Weeks turned into months. Julia found herself torn between two worlds. With Ben, she felt like a new version of herself, freer, lighter, almost reckless. They whispered secrets under the veil of moonlight and shared stolen kisses in the quiet corners of town. Yet every step further into that world made the return to her reality all the more painful. The thrill had begun to feel tainted. Despite Ben's charm and youthful energy, a quiet truth crept in. This couldn't last. The affair was unsustainable, and the guilt that had once been a whisper had become a roar. One evening, while preparing dinner, her thoughts drifted back to life before everything had changed. She remembered the peace, the simplicity, and the love she and Mark once shared. Mark entered the kitchen, his expression softening as he saw her. "Hey, love. What's for dinner?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Just the usual," Julia replied, her voice barely hiding her inner turmoil. Mark studied her face. "You okay? You've seemed different lately." "I'm fine," she lied, offering a hollow smile. But it was getting harder to keep up the charade. The guilt had begun to eat away at her, slowly and relentlessly. Then one afternoon, her phone buzzed with a message from Ben. "Can we meet at the park? I need to talk." Her stomach turned as she made her way to the secluded bench they always met at, a place that once held excitement, but now felt heavy with tension. She found him pacing, his expression tight. "Ben? What's going on?" she asked, feeling the shift before he even spoke. "I've been thinking," he began, voice low. "I care about you, Julia, but I can't keep doing this in the shadows. I want more. I need more." Her heart thudded in her chest. She had known this day might come, but hearing it aloud still struck like a bolt of lightning. "I don't know if I can give you that," she whispered. "I'm married. I can't just walk away from everything." Ben's jaw tightened. "And what about us? You can't tell me this hasn't meant something to you." "It has," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "It's meant more than I can explain. But Mark, he doesn't deserve this. He deserves the truth. He deserves better." Ben looked away, frustration etched into his face. "So that's it? You're just going to keep living this double life? Pretending like nothing's happening?" Julia felt trapped, her pulse quickening. She had been living in two worlds for too long, and now they were colliding. "I need time to think," Julia whispered, her voice trembling as she stepped away from Ben. A heaviness settled deep in her stomach, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. She felt the walls of her secret world begin to close in, knowing that the truth was dangerously close to the surface. That evening, she sat beside Mark on the couch, barely able to focus as he flipped through the television channels, chuckling at some comedy show. Julia stared blankly at the screen, her heart thudding with dread. She felt like a ghost in her own life, a stranger beneath the roof they once called home. Her phone buzzed, a message from Ben. "We need to talk. This can't go on like this." Her chest tightened. It was the moment she'd been dreading and avoiding. She looked over at Mark, whose smile still came so easily, and a wave of grief surged through her. How had she let it get this far? The next day, she met Ben at a small cafe tucked away on a quiet street. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. As they sat across from each other, the weight of their choices pressed down on them. "I can't keep doing this," Julia said, tears gathering in her eyes. "I can't keep betraying my husband. This isn't who I am." Ben's expression softened, though the hurt in his eyes remained. "I understand, but I can't be a secret anymore. I need to know where we stand." "I don't know." Her voice cracked. "I love Mark, but with you I felt alive again, something I hadn't felt in years." Ben leaned in slightly, his tone firm but gentle. "Then make a choice. You can't live like this forever. You have to decide what you really want." His words hit her like a tidal wave. She had built her life with Mark, and now every piece of it was at risk. Her heart felt like it was being torn in two. That evening, when Julia returned home, Mark was waiting for her, concern etched across his face. "Where were you?" he asked softly. "I was worried." "I was just out," she said, her voice barely steady. "You've been distant lately," he continued. "Something's not right. Talk to me, Jules." The words stuck in her throat, but she couldn't hold back any longer. "Mark, I need to tell you something." And so, it all came pouring out. The affair, her confusion, the guilt, and the shame. Her voice trembled with every word, her eyes brimming with tears. She expected anger, and it came. But what hurt most was the heartbreak on his face. "How could you?" Mark whispered, voice raw. "I trusted you. I thought we were solid. I thought we were forever." "I never meant to hurt you," she cried. "I lost myself. I was unhappy, and I didn't know how to fix it." Mark stood up, his hands shaking. "You didn't try. You just left me behind." The silence that followed was unbearable. Julia felt the full weight of what she'd done. The home they built now felt like a stranger's house, filled with echoes of laughter and love now turned to shadows. In the days that followed, Mark packed his things and moved out, taking only what he needed. The house felt cavernous and cold without him. Julia tried to reach Ben, but things had shifted. Their spark had dimmed. What once felt electric now felt hollow, like a faded memory. She was alone. She threw herself into the bakery, crafting delicate pastries and experimenting with new recipes. It was the only place she still felt a sense of purpose. But even there, reminders haunted her. Every couple who walked in hand made her heart ache. One night, as she locked up, she stood outside and looked at the warm lights of Maplewood. The town hadn't changed, but she had. The thrill she had chased came at a price, a steep one. And now, all that was left was the quiet hum of regret. Months passed. Julia started therapy, slowly unraveling the reasons behind her choices. She learned to sit with her guilt, to face it head-on. Healing was not a straight path, but she kept walking it. Then one day, sitting in a quiet cafe, she saw a familiar face pass by. Mark. Their eyes met. The air seemed to pause. He hesitated before stepping inside. "Hey," he said gently. "Hey," she replied, her heart pounding. They made small talk. It felt fragile but warm, like sunlight after a storm. "I'm sorry for everything," Julia said, her voice quivering. "I made choices I'll regret for the rest of my life. But I'm trying to be better. I really am." Mark nodded, eyes softening. It's going to take time, but I can see you're trying. That matters. From there, they took small steps, therapy sessions, long conversations, learning to trust again. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt and hurt, but there were also flickers of hope. Julia rediscovered her joy in baking and began offering small classes at the bakery. Teaching others brought her peace. She was creating something new, not just pastries, but a better version of herself. Eventually, as she and Mark stood side by side, watching the sun dip below the rooftops of Maplewood, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Peace. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs.